Welcome on into a live edition of Falcons Today. Matthew Peterson here with you guys 1 week before the start of the 2024 NFL Draft, and we're going to talk about some draft news and rumors. We're going to react to a 7-round mock draft from one of my favorite draft insiders, Dane Brugler at The Athletic, and we're also going to run through a trade idea to help Atlanta's wide receiver room. So before we get to all that good stuff, shout out your city for me in the chat. I want to spend the next few minutes letting the audience click on to the notification, get their seats, get their popcorn, get their drinks before we start the movie. So let me know where you are tuning in from in the chat. It's always good to see how wide fan bases can spread, and they're not just, just restricted to one city or state. So let me know where you're tuning in from, as I've got Austin watching from Lexington, Kentucky. Austin, have we spoken since the Mark Pope hire? I don't think we have. Thoughts? I don't think if I told you a month ago Kentucky's hiring BYU's head coach, you'd be very happy about it. But like any hire, I think you always try to pump yourself up about it. Okay. Let's see. Steve is listening from London. I was in London last February. Had a blast. Loved it. Let's see. I've got Albany, New York. Ed Garrett's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I've got Charlotte in the house. Emrod is in Dallas. I've got the 901 Shelby Drive, Memphis from Patrick Richardson. Fort Myers, Florida. Represents Southwest Florida, RSW. Eric is in upstate New York. Jason is in Salt Lake City. Jason, are you going to be going to a Salt Lake City Yeti? I think that's what they're going to go with, the hot new NHL team, as the Coyotes moved just a few 100 miles north. But exciting times for Salt Lake City. The Jazz, and they have an NHL team now. I don't know where they're going to play. I assume they'll play in the same arena as the Jazz. Let's see. Joe Mitz is in Georgia. Dontrell Jester's in Tallahassee, Florida. I've got Los Angeles in the house right now. Ricky's in Georgia as well. And then Country Chris, a place you have never heard of, Big Stone Gap, Virginia. That is correct. I have never heard of Big Stone Gap, Virginia. In college, I had a job delivering lost luggage from the airport in Knoxville, Tennessee. And people from all walks of life in Southeast Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, North Carolina, they would use Knoxville's airport as their closest airport. So I one time had to do a delivery to someone in Virginia. It's like a 3-hour drive. I was very upset that American Airlines or someone lost their bag. Ty Man the Buckeyes here, and I've got Scott Long watching from Denver, Colorado. Okay, so I want to invite Cullen Brown, our producer, on to talk about this next question here. Would you trade for Courtland Sutton? The Denver Broncos' #1 wide receiver, who had 10 touchdowns last season, is not at voluntary workouts, and that alone is not enough to start raising alarm bells. They're voluntary workouts. Most teams don't get 100% attendance. But his absence is due in part because of a contract dispute. And we know how those can snowball. And if Denver thinks that it could snowball into a big issue, maybe they decide to unload Courtland Sutton during the draft. So, if that's the case, would you want Terry Fontenot to pick up the call Denver and say, listen, we'll give you a 5th or 6th round pick for Courtland Sutton? Is that something you're interested in? Yes or no? Diego says no. Let's see. Anyone else? I got Jason Quinn saying yes, sir. Jason's excited for the NHL team. So let me know. Are you guys interested in trading for the former 2nd-round pick out of SMU? He had a really good start to his NFL career, 1,000 yards, 2019 Pro Bowl season. Then he tore his ACL, and I wouldn't say he's never been the same player since, but hasn't gotten above 1,000 yards. He's dealt with a lot of bad quarterbacks. I think Sutton is still a talented wide receiver. Not sold on him and his style of play. Aging well. Let's see. Randy says no. Tariq says no. Rich says yes if the price is right. Country Chris says no, Sutton sucks. I think the price would be somewhere between a 4th and a 6th. He's got $13 million of base salary, so that's what a team would be taking on. He's 28 years old. He's not going to cost you a 1st, a 2nd, and I would be really surprised if he cost you a 3rd. I think it's between 4 and a 5th. So would you deal one of your first picks in day 3 for Courtland Sutton? Let me know. Yes or no. Austin says no. Clayton Anderson saying no as well. Okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of today's show, make sure to get into our mailbag, which we'll have later on. Use hashtag Falcons in the chat, or you can super chat if you want to support the show. Get on screen. Have your question guaranteed to be shown to everyone watching. You're more than welcome to super chat. They're greatly appreciated. But if you're unable to, no problem at all. Just be active in the chat, like the video. Those are also great ways to support the channel as well. So make sure to get into our mailbag, which will be later on in today's episode. Now, speaking of today's show, here's what I've got on the menu. We're going to run through the latest news and rumors related to Sutton and a pre-draft visit with one of the better DBs, Kool-Aid McKinstry, in this draft. And then I want to react to the Athletic 7-round mock draft with you all, see who Dane Brugler selected for Atlanta, and then, like I just mentioned, that mailbag at the end of the show. So that's what I got on tap for everyone today. We've got 78 plus people tuned in, just 12 likes. It's kind of like that's a nut tap, right? That's not a kick in the downstairs region, but it definitely makes your stomach hurt a little bit when you got 78 people watching and 12 likes. So if you haven't liked the video yet, hit the thumbs up button.
Hit that thumbs up. Come on. If you've hit the like button and you want to type me in the chat,
Ooh, I like that idea too.
I can give some shout outs.
Yeah.
So
85 people hanging out with us already. Just make sure to like the video. We're at 19 likes. When we get to 25 likes, we're going to jump into our first segment. So 6 more likes to go, and then we're going to get this plane off the ground. It's kind of like in the movie Pearl Harbor. Like Doolittle's raid, the planes are too heavy. The Japanese know we're coming. We got to strip it down and get those planes off the ground. We're landing in China.
Yep. Shout out to Trey. Shout out to Ty Man.
If you get that reference alone, you should like the video. That should be kind of good.
Boyd
also,
Severe.
Major spoiler for Pearl
Preston.
Harbor. But I feel like that happened long enough ago.
I would
Spoilers are
you may not be in
now.
touch with it.
Yeah.
I'm about to say you're behind on some stuff.
I am. The running. So it's not even a running joke. I'm a big part of my Take fan, and I walk to work, which is like 20 minutes when it's nice out, 25 minutes, or I drive and it's like 12 minutes. And most of that 12 minutes is actually in the parking garages of my building and this building.
Right.
And I have a very short commute, so I don't catch up on PMT very quickly. And I am currently listening to their episode of the NFL playoffs divisional round preview.
No kidding.
So no spoilers, but I'm very excited to see, can the Lions continue this run?
I mean,
or was that their Super Bowl against the Rams?
I don't want to spoil anything, dude.
I also don't know what happens in the Bucs-Eagles game yet, because this came out on Sunday and this game's on Monday.
Thank you for letting me know.
So don't say anything.
I got you. I got you.
Remains to be seen. All right, here we go. Let's get into our first segment here, our news and rumors roundup for everyone. If you like the content, like the video. Otherwise, I don't know, too cool for school, I guess. Here we go. Let's get into it. Coming up on today's show, I want to talk about the possibility of trading for Courtland Sutton, as the Broncos' #1 wide receiver may be available, and I could see Atlanta picking up the phone and kicking the tires on a guy who had 10 touchdowns a season ago. And then we're going to break down Alabama DB Kool-Aid McKinstry's pre-draft visit with the Falcons and run through whether or not that would be a good fit for Atlanta at 43. But really quickly, we reached 21,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for joining the channel, for all of you recent subscribers. We're going to be live, by the way, quick programming alert, next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. Usually we're live on Thursdays. I think there's something next Thursday, though. I can't really remember what it is, though. So instead, we'll be live on Wednesday. Come join us for a live show if you have never joined us before. Now, let's talk about Courtland Sutton, though, because he is holding out, and that's got some, asterisks to it. Voluntary workouts. It's not a huge deal at the moment, but it's not because he doesn't want to be there. It's because of a contract issue, according to boots-on-the-ground reporters in the Mile High City. See, Sutton only has 2 years left on his contract with $2 million guaranteed in those 2 years. So he is looking for more guaranteed money for the remainder of his contract. Now, his yearly cash for 2024 is $13.6 million. So if a team traded for Courtland Sutton, it would be in that ballpark, but sometimes the team trading the player away will eat some of the contract to get a better draft pick in return. So nothing's an absolute for what it would cost to get Courtland Sutton when it comes to a contract standpoint. Now, as for what it would cost to get him from a trade capital standpoint, because you'd likely have to give up draft picks for him, I think we can look at the Jerry Jeudy trade that Denver made a few weeks ago with the Browns, or a few months ago at this point now, I guess. Jeudy went for a 5th and a 6th. Now, Jeudy and Sutton are at different stages of their career, right? Jerry Jeudy is 4-5 years younger than Courtland Sutton. He also had a 5th-year option of fully guaranteed $16.9 million, and the Broncos at the time were about $20-ish million over the salary cap. So they really needed to get some cap relief, which is why the Browns somewhat did them a solid by trading for Jeudy, alleviating them of $17-ish million in cap space. And Denver was lucky to get, a 5th and a 6th. So I don't want you to look at this and think, oh, Courtland Sutton's going to go for the exact same. This is a good baseline, but it's not apples to apples because Sutton is older, pro or con, but cheaper, but maybe better than Jerry Jeudy because he had 10 touchdowns last year, right? You can look at his stats over the last 4 seasons. His best year was in 2019. He went over 1,000 yards. He was a Pro Bowler for Denver. Then he tore his ACL, unfortunately, in 2020. It didn't rebound nicely the following 2 seasons. He had 4 touchdowns combined from 2021 through 2022. And then last year with the Broncos, he really breaks out. Well, breaks not the best word, but he really has a resurgence, let's say, in his career. 10 touchdowns, 772 yards. I would be willing to trade a 5th rounder for Courtland Sutton. If Jerry Jeudy went for a 5th and a 6th, I think you could get Courtland Sutton for somewhere around a 5th. Keep in mind, the Broncos would be, relieved of about $13-ish million in salary cap obligations. So that would be a little bit of a pro for them. Maybe they would be looking for a 4th. Now, it's very early in this holdout stage because it's just voluntary workouts right now. But if you're Denver, you got to think, if this were to snowball and Courtland Sutton is looking for more guaranteed money, and the Broncos, and I don't blame them for this, have no interest in doing that. And they're thinking down the road a little bit towards training camp. And I know, way away from now. But if they fear that Sutton's dug in, and they're going to be dug in, and it's voluntary right now, but pretty soon it won't be, their best time to move him would be before the draft. If you trade Courtland Sutton after the draft, think about it. If you're Denver, you're losing a player, and let's say you get a 5th-round pick from Atlanta, that 5th-round pick is for 2025. So now you're short a wide receiver in Courtland Sutton and a draft pick that would turn into a player that you would have for the 2024 season. You're kind of down 2 players if you wait till after the draft. So I don't expect a trade to go down, but who expected A.J. Brown or Marquise Brown to get traded on draft day? These things do happen when it comes to contracts. Now, Atlanta's got 8 picks in this year's draft, so they could afford to move on from a day 3 pick, right? It's not like they really need those picks because they're shorthanded in the top 100. No, they've got 4 picks in the top 80. That's one of the best draft arsenals across the National Football League. So even if they feel like he's not worth, say, a 4th-round pick, they may feel like, you know what? We could give up a 4th for Courtland Sutton and then really prioritize defense with the first 3 rounds because wide receiver is no longer such a pressing issue when you've got Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, tossing Courtland Sutton. Yeah, it's always nice to bring some youth into that room, but maybe that's something they target in next year's draft if the draft board doesn't start shaking out well for them and their favorite wide receivers are gone by pick 43 and they don't want to reach on a guy and they pick up the phone and give Denver a call and say, we were hoping to get Ladd McConkey at pick 43. He was gone. Can we please have Courtland Sutton for a 4th? Now, I think there is a need for Courtland Sutton in Atlanta. Darnell Mooney showed us some really good years early on in his career, but I've got my concerns for a guy who had back-to-back sub-500-yard receiving seasons and 3 total touchdowns. I am a fan of Darnell Mooney. I think he was a victim of COVID pre-draft combine, like the lack of it, resulting in going unnoticed, falling to day 3, and it was a great pick for Chicago. But we going to act like Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore are just surefire things behind Drake London? I mean, you got to think about the style of offense Atlanta's going to be running. Last year, the Falcons were 31st, 32nd in 11 personnel. That's 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Now they bring in Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins, who are descendants of Sean McVay's coaching tree in a way. And the Sean McVay coaching tree loves some 11 personnel. They love having 3 wide receivers on the field. So if you're going to have 3 wide receivers going, you got to have good wide receivers and good depth, which is why I think adding Courtland Sutton could be a smart move for Atlanta. So let me know, would you trade for Courtland Sutton? If I were the Falcons, if I was Terry Fontenot, I would make an inquiry. Make a call to Denver, see what's going on there, touch base. If there's really nothing to be had and this is a non-story, move on. But if you could get him for a 4th or a 5th, I'd be very interested in doing so. Now, before we talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry visiting with Atlanta, I do want to fill everyone in on our great sponsor today, which is Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The way Prize Picks works is all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. If you don't know what that means in layman's terms, this is my job. So I'm taking the more on Kirk Cousins' passing yards for 2024. I'm expecting, I wouldn't even say a bounce-back season, but for Cousins to pick up where he left off, and that is a 4,000-plus yard passer. I'm also fading Jalen Hurts. I'm taking the less on his passing yards, and as a result, I want to take the more on Saquon Barkley's. So if you want to have some fun around the NFL this upcoming season, get involved on these season-long stat projections because it gives you something to root for all year long and not just for a Sunday or a Monday. So download Prize Picks today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now, when it comes to making trades, Terry Fontenot is no stranger to making trades. You think about the beginning portions of his, GM career with Atlanta, he had a lot of trades going outbound. Now you look at the last 12 or so months, and a lot of trades going inbound, right? Rondale Moore, Kentavious Street, Van Jefferson, Jeff Okudah. He was aggressively pursuing Montez Sweat, according to a lot of reports. So don't put it past Fontenot to at least make a move or make an effort to try and get a trade done because he's not someone that likes to sit on his hands. He's not one of the most aggressive GMs in the National Football League, but he's not afraid to shell out draft capital for players. Now, next up on the show, let's talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry, the Alabama defensive back who had a pre-draft visit with the Falcons, according to the Atlanta Journal-Courier, the AJC. And let's get to know McKinstry for a moment. 5'11", 199 pounds. He ran a 4.47 40-yard dash and was a 3-year starter for the Crimson Tide. So from a speed standpoint, it's not one of the best in the draft. I mean, he's not one of the fastest, long or short, like quickness kind of burst players we have in this year's draft. But he does have a lot of experience. And the tape says he plays faster than what he ran in his underwear in Indianapolis. And you can look at his coverage stats from a season ago. We're talking about a guy who gave up 19 completions for just 205 yards and 1 touchdown. And you go up against some really good quarterbacks in the SEC. Like when he went up against Brian Thomas against LSU, Brian Thomas had 3 grabs for 35 yards up against Kool-Aid McKinstry. So if the idea is to go with McKinstry at pick 43, I don't have a big issue with this. Obviously, it's tough to say like yes or no to anyone at 43 because I don't know who goes 1 through 42. But if the draft is relatively chalky and there's not some unbelievable fall of a player, then just surface level, if I'm told today Atlanta's picking Kool-Aid at 43, I'm going to be on board with that pick. Now, let's get to know him a little bit better, though. He lined up primarily as an outside corner at Alabama, and we know teams are really coveting corners with some Swiss Army knife elements to their game. Because when you think about what we talked about earlier, right, how 11 personnel is kind of the rising train of thought. 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. If you've got 3 wide receivers on the field offensively, the defense is going to need to have 3 DBs on the field. So teams are always looking for players who offer versatility. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think he's more of an outside corner. I wouldn't be shocked if some teams start to use him as a safety, but he's got high IQ. He really knows the game of football, and he puts himself in positions to be successful despite not running the best 40-yard dash or having insane bursts at the line of scrimmage. I think that not lack of athleticism, but that just slight dip. I mean, football is a game of margins, and that slight margin is what's keeping him probably being from a lock in round 1 to a late first, early second type of player. So when you look at Atlanta's cornerback room, I like D. Alford at nickel. I also wouldn't mind Clark Phillips competing with Alford at nickel. And then you can toss Terrell and McKinstry on the outside, and you're going to have 4 good corners. And this is a cornerstone position. You got to have some good depth there. Now, as for the other players Atlanta has brought in for a pre-draft visit or done some sort of visit with, Michael Penix in Washington. That is smokescreen season, calling it right now. Trying to get other teams concerned that Atlanta could go Penix at 43. They're not. They just want to kind of present that front. So if a team really wants Penix, they'll give Atlanta an insane offer for the 43rd overall pick. Kentucky running back Ray Davis, Rashid Ali from Marshall, Ladd McConkey. His stock is really rising, guys. Tip Ryman from Illinois, an absolute freak of an athlete. I think that's a great day 3 selection. We got a local visit in Georgia State's Travis Glover, Western Michigan's Marshawn Nealon. Production not quite there. Athletic traits are there, but you know my rule. For edge rushers, I need production. Not want, but a need. Then you got Dallas Turner from Alabama, and then to wrap it up, Jared Verse, Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Kool-Aid McKinstry joins a set of DBs, and then the USC safety, Kalen Bullock. Now, like I was saying earlier, Ladd McConkey, his stock is really, really rising. Now, I think he's going to kind of slip through the cracks a little bit because he doesn't have great production his last year in Athens. That was in part due to an injury. But I think teams are looking at him as more than just a gadget player, but someone that can run great routes, who's got surefire hands, who's got incredible burst and quickness. And when you think about Atlanta's wide receiver room, London's your big body, like jump ball, 50-50 type of receiver. Mooney's your vertical threat. Rondale Moore is just happy to be here, and the Falcons are happy to have someone for Desmond Ridder. But McConkey, I think he could fit a nice role on this offense, working over the middle and underneath. I still believe, though, it's Dallas Turner at pick number 8 to kind of wrap up our draft segment here, if you will. I know it's kind of getting a little bit dry seeing the same name over and over and over again in mock drafts. I don't remember the last time a player was mocked so frequently to a team outside of the top 5. I mean, mock drafts are tough. It's tough to even predict what happens at 8, knowing you got to make predictions on what happens 7 teams in front of them. But the worst kept secret in the world is the Atlanta Falcons are taking Dallas Turner at pick number 8. Like, I am more confident about the 8th overall pick than the 2nd overall pick. And the 2nd overall pick is basically the 1st overall pick because we know what Chicago's doing at number 1. So it's Dallas Turner at 8. He's a Falcon. Now, I do want to ask a bit of a deep cut question here. To the end of the video crew, I know you guys are diehards, so this may not be the easiest question for the casuals, but that's not an issue for you if you're still watching. Who do you want to pick at 43? We spent all this time like bickering over the 8th overall pick. What about round number 2? Like, we don't know who's going to be there for sure or not, but in a dream world within reason, who do you want to be the 43rd overall pick in the draft? I would love Drazan Johnny Newton out of Illinois. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet, join 21,000 strong here at Falcons Today by Chat Sports. Okay. Nathan says, I like Sutton, but I feel like we already have that type of guy in London. I don't disagree, Nathan, that the two may have some similarities in their game. All I'll say is, when you think about the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, like, Kirk Cousins wasn't necessarily a strictly pure bomb it down the field quarterback, but he liked to let it loose, and he liked to give his receivers a chance to come down with the football. If that's the style of quarterback play you have, why not lean into that by doubling down with your wide receivers? I understand where you're coming from. I don't think there has to be like a nail in the coffin to say no to trading for Sutton. Okay. I've got Floyd in the chat here. Randy's hanging out with us. Christopher Brown. I wouldn't make any deals with Denver. Isaiah Jones. What do we need to possibly trade back late in the first round? So, are you saying like trade back from 8 to like 20, or like to go from 43 back into round 1 again to have 2 first-round picks? I'm not sure which one. I think you mean the latter. Jump back into the end of round 1. I mean, you think about a team like the Chiefs and 49ers, when you're picking at 32 and 31, your roster's already in a pretty good spot. Now, I don't think Kansas City will be super. Actually, I don't know. If for the Chiefs, if they've got a receiver they really like, let's say it's like A.D. Mitchell, and he's there at 32, they're probably not going to listen to any offers. But if he goes to the Bills right before them, and they don't have like a number 1 favorite after that, maybe they'd be open to trading back to 43 with Atlanta, and then the Chiefs have 2 second-round picks, and they can go get 2 wide receivers and kind of spread their chips around. So to go from 43 to 32, it would probably be like swapping those picks, 43 and 32, and then giving up your first third-round pick. That's likely what it would cost to make that happen. Okay, are we ready to jump into our second segment?
We can be. Let me get that set up.
We got over 100 people tuned in, 50 likes at the moment. Can we get to 55 likes? 55 likes before we start Dane Brugler's 7-round mock draft for Atlanta. We'll react to the picks he made. It's a million degrees in this room. Jeepers creepers. I know. Producer Colin and I walked in the studio before we started the live show. He's like, just a warning, it's really hot in here. I'm like, it's a little toasty. I'm on the sun right now. That's where I'm at here. Yeah. All right, we're at 57 likes. Reached our quota. Now we're ready to start our mock draft reaction. Diego, I like that question. Good question from Diego. Be like Diego. Hashtag Falcons in the chat. Like Isaiah, I liked your question a lot.
Yep.
Please put hashtag Falcons in your question again, and then I'll address it again in the mailbag with a much more thorough answer.
Yeah, feel free to use hashtag Falcons. If you want to be guaranteed to be in that mailbag, if you want a super chat, even if it's $1, whatever amount, we are greatly appreciative of it.
Yeah, still looking for our first super chat of the day. So if you want to make history, if you want to spot in Atlanta Falcons YouTube history, can you tell the story of Atlanta Falcons YouTube history without the first super chatter today?
I don't think we can.
I don't think you can.
I don't think we can either.
No one will ever know. This will just get lost like the libraries of Alexandria. Okay. Jack, appreciate your question. Here we go. Let's react to Dane Brugler's 7-round mock draft for the Falcons. Mock draft time here on Falcons Today as the Athletic's Dane Brugler dropped a 7-round full mocky for Atlanta. And I want to run through pick by pick with you all and give you my analysis and reaction to the picks that Dane Brugler made. So without further ado, let's get right into the fun. First pick in round number 1 for the Falcons is, no surprise, Dallas Turner, Alabama's edge rusher. Here's what Brugler had to say on this selection for the Falcons. There is a good chance we see something this year that has happened just once, 2021, in the Super Bowl era. No defensive players selected in the first 7 picks of the draft. If that comes to fruition, the Falcons will have their choice of the top defensive player on their board at number 8, and I don't think many people will be surprised if that is Turner. And I know that Dallas Turner is not a new name to any of us, and we have spent the entire offseason talking about Turner, Latu, and Verse, and which one of those 3 guys is the best pick for Atlanta at number 8. And he has been the most frequently mocked player to a team other than Caleb Williams to the Bears. In fact, I think we may have more mock drafts of Dallas Turner to Atlanta than Caleb Williams to Chicago. In fact, I could also just say, like, the Falcons draft starts at pick 43 because it feels like it's so obvious who they're going with at pick number 8. So Turner last year for the Crimson Tide, good production, great production. 14.5 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. Now, on the last graphic, we pointed out that, 9 out of 14 games, he had 3 or fewer pressures. So that's a concern, right? And maybe that's something that Atlanta really does some deep diving on. But to me, I just don't think they're going to look past the physical traits and the production that met with it. Plus, he was always kind of in the shadow of Will Anderson. What does he look like when he's the clear-cut number 1 pass rusher for just more than 1 season like he was in Tuscaloosa? But I am definitive when I say Dallas Turner is a Falcon. He's a Falcon. Dallas Turner is a fucking bird now. Like, I don't know what else to say. I will be doing a naked lap if Atlanta passes on Dallas Turner. It just seems like we know 2 things about the draft. Caleb's a Bear, and Dallas is a Falcon. Seems like a done deal to me. So are you excited for Dallas Turner? Give me a yes or give me a no. I'm excited. Dallas Turner is not one of my favorite prospects in this draft. If I was making the calls, I would pick Rome Odunze because I just think Rome Odunze is that much higher of a prospect. But I just think that the Falcons are going to yo-yo from being offensive-minded drafting the last few years, like the last, 3 straight years of going offense in rounds 1, tight end, wide receiver, running back. Last year they trade up to get Matthew Bergeron in round 2. So a lot of resources in free agency this year going to the offense. Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, Charlie Warner, trading for Rondale Moore. Now I think they try and swing back to the defensive side, and they go Dallas Turner at number 8. Moving on to round number 2 in Brugler's mock, he had Atlanta picking Michael Hall Jr., the Ohio State defensive tackle at 43. I'm going to pause on my reaction to this after I give you the scouting report, and I'll let you kind of come up with your own opinion. 6'2", 299 pounds, so not one of the bigger DTs, but man, does he move fast. He's got a great first step. He's got an excellent quickness to his game. He is slippery. Athletically, he moves much faster than near 300-pound human beings should move. Now, unfortunately, the con and the reason why he's in that round 2 to round 3 conversation, despite being so athletically gifted for a near 300-pound human being, is the production was underwhelming last year and just not a whole lot of consistency from week to week in Columbus. And if any Buckeyes fans are watching right now, please chime into the comment section below. Tell me if I'm right or tell me if I'm wrong, but that was my takeaway when watching Michael Hall. I think it's too early to make this pick at 43. I think the lack of consistency over the last 2 seasons, injuries are something to monitor as well, but for a guy that went from having 4.5 sacks and 7.5 tackles for loss in 2022, taking a bit of a step back in some ways, like the pressures went up and that's important, but I just don't think at pick 43, Hall, who is just a little bit too much of a gamble, is worth the pick here. Top 50, I'm looking for more proven commodities. I've never been on the train of you just always take the athletic guys. If we were making USA's track team, sure, let's do that. We're not. We're putting together a football team. So I'm looking for football players. And I think there are better options at 43. Could Atlanta stand to add to their defensive line, like interior specifically? Sure, Grady Jarrett's coming off a torn ACL. He's 30 years old. David Onyemata's no spring chicken. You've got Zach Harrison and James Smith-Williams kind of battling for that last starting role on the defensive line. I've got no issue with resupplying the trenches here. I don't like the pick at 43 of Michael Hall. I'm sorry, Michael Hall, if you're watching. Moving on to round 3 now at 74. We get a Georgia Bulldog going just west to downtown Atlanta, and that is Kamari Lassiter. 5'11", 186 pounds, and here's where the fun ends. Ran a 4.64 40-yard dash. If you're not a familiar viewer or frequent viewer of the channel, I won't beat a dead horse here, but I think there are certain position groups that you should really value athletic testing, and others you don't have to value it as much. Cornerback is one of them. It's already difficult enough to play cornerback in the NFL when the rules are stacked against you and the wide receivers know where they're running and you have to go step for step with them. Doing that at a 4.64 40-yard speed is going to make life a whole lot more difficult. But despite that, it's not like Kamari was an issue for Kirby Smart last year. 2-year starter, 15 pass breakups, an interception. He's known for his extremely high IQ. And when I think about Raheem Morris, the guy is just such an intelligent person. I think he wants to find that level of intelligence in his draft picks as well. And so for that reason, I think Lassiter just screams Raheem Morris type of player. So I like the value of Lassiter at 74 because at that point in the draft, you're not finding a whole bunch of great athletes anymore. And I think what we saw in Athens for a while was the guy can play football. He may not be the best athlete on the field. He may not be the fastest, but he's going to put himself in good positions to be successful. So at 74, I'm willing to roll the dice on a guy that sure may not be fastest on the field, but that never stopped him in the SEC, and I think he can hold his own in the NFL. Last year for Georgia, 8 pass breakups, 3.5 tackles for loss, and 37 tackles altogether. Atlanta's cornerback room definitely needs some reinforcements. Clark Phillips is entering a big sophomore season. He ended the year essentially as a starter, replacing Jeff Okudah, but I don't know if Atlanta's ready just to anoint him a starting cornerback. So you bring in some competition beyond veterans like Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King. Moving on to the next third-round pick, thank you, Jacksonville. Devontae Tez Walker, 79th overall out of UNC. So let's talk about the former Toledo Rocket and then the UNC Tar Heel. 6'1", 193 pounds, 4.36 40-yard dash. I know I just spit out a bunch of numbers, but just try to let that sink in for a moment. Good size and great speed, that combination doesn't exist in every single draft class. In fact, I give him the DK Metcalf comp because he is the first player since DK Metcalf to be 6'1" or taller, 190 pounds or bigger, and run a 4.36 40-yard dash. So if you're looking for a great athlete, here's your man. And I think that's why he's going to be a day 2 pick, but he probably won't be a round 2 selection because he only had 1 season of Power 5 football with UNC, and he played in only 8 games, FUNCAA, but in those 8 games with Drake May, the two put together a really good connection. Nearly 700 yards. That's an average of 17 yards of reception, by the way, and 7 touchdowns. So like Lassiter, is Tez Walker someone I'm going to pound on the table for being a surefire thing? No, but you're not going to find a whole lot of surefire things in round 3. But I do think, like the opposite of Lassiter, the traits here, they kind of have me fired up. Like if you can get DK Metcalf in round 3, and by the way, DK Metcalf was the final pick in round 2, I'm pretty sure. We're not very far off from where DK went. And DK had a kind of similar-ish profile coming in. Not apples to apples, he was at Ole Miss, but I'm willing to bet the 76 overall pick on a guy that could have the upside of a DK Metcalf. And then add in the fact that I think Atlanta needs to add a wide receiver in this draft. You bring in Zach Robinson to be your play caller. You bring in Kirk Cousins from Kevin O'Connell, and now the OC and the quarterback have one similar parent in their family tree, which is Sean McVay, who loves using his 11 personnel, you're going to have a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. You don't even have a reliable 4th receiver. Like Kadarius Hodge comes back for special teams, in my opinion. So if you have an injury to one of those top 3 guys, and those top 3 guys, by the way, I don't think make one of the best wide receiver rooms in football. I think it's very much in Atlanta's interest to add a receiver in the first 2 days of the draft. Now, what's a bigger need for the Falcons? Cornerback or wide receiver? If there are 2 players available for Atlanta at 43 or in round 3 that have identical grades, and the only difference is one's a corner, one's a wide receiver, which one do you want Atlanta to pick? For me, I would lean wide receiver. If you're going to spend $180 million on Kirk Cousins, you better make it successful. And Drake London's great. I like Darnell Mooney. I'm excited about Rondale Moore, but it's really just because they were able to get something for Desmond Ridder. I'd rather see them add a wide receiver. All right, moving on here to the rest of our mock draft. Starting in round 4 now on to day 3, where the Falcons go with offensive lineman Delmar Glaze out of Maryland with pick 109. So let's get to know Mr. Krispy Kreme here. 6'4", 315 pounds. He was a 3-year starter for the Terrapins. Began at right tackle, and then, like usual, best offensive lineman in college football, made the switch to left tackle to protect the blind side. Now, he projects to be a guard in the NFL, and we've seen Atlanta go down that path before. Bergeron, most notably, Syracuse left tackle, bumped him to left guard. When we're in round 4 of the draft, you're still finding some pretty good players, but you're definitely looking for players that have some special teams upside to their game, along with just the overall hope of developmental here. So I think the offensive line selection is not a bad one, especially last year when you saw Matthews and Caleb McGarry. They kind of showed some unusual injury tendencies. So reassuring the offensive line sounds like a very safe move to me. Now, before we get on to the rest of the mock draft today, speaking of Kirk Cousins and this offensive line, if you want to go get a brand new Falcons jersey, go to chatsports.com/Cousins and get yourself a brand new Kirk Cousins jersey. Wear it to week 1, wear it to your first tailgate, wear it over the summer, but make sure you got the best and the newest Falcons gear by going to chatsports.com/Cousins. I put that link for you in the comments and description of today's video. On to round number 5, where Atlanta goes with a second Georgia Bulldog. This time it's safety/star DB Tyke Smith. So 5'10", 202 pounds. He started his career off at West Virginia. Then he transferred to Athens. He was a starter his final season for Kirby Smart. Led Georgia in tackles for loss, and interceptions. And I think you could ask some diehard Bulldogs fans some trivia about some of the great defensive leaders they've had. And they've had a lot of really good ones the last half decade. And he quietly sticks out as someone that doesn't get a lot of recognition, but has a lot of production. So in round number 5, I'm willing to take a chance on a Georgia Bulldog who led the team in 3 different statistical categories. That, to me, signals this is worth the chance alone. In round 6, the Falcons go running back this time with Marshall Thundering Herd Rasheen Ali. Here's what Brugler wrote specifically about this selection. The Falcons have a terrific 1-2 backfield combination in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. But Ali would be an outstanding addition because of his big play potential when given space to operate. It's day 3. My motto is best player available and special teams upside. And then you toss in that Ali led the FBS in 50-plus yards from the line of scrimmage a season ago. I'm willing to roll the dice on someone like that in round number 6. And then to round out this mock draft, maybe it's my favorite pick of all, best for last. It's my sweet prince from the University of Tennessee, Joe Milton. I am not going to listen or read any comments that have any slander towards Joe Milton. He had the worst wide receiver core in the SEC last year, probably after Vanderbilt. But still, he put some balls in buckets. And I'm not going to go name by name here, but certain guys that rhyme with the word Eaton could not catch a football. So Joe Milton, Yes, it's very low-hanging fruit to say he's got a rocket of an arm, but he can't find anyone downfield. He's going to be a tight end. This is someone that I'm willing to stake half of my reputation on, that he's going to be more than just a Felipe Franks. Now, Milton is not a perfect quarterback. I can recognize that. And he's definitely not an elite processor. And what did Raheem Morris say when he was asked about what he looks for in a quarterback? An elite processor. So it's round 6. Beggars can't be choosers. But if Atlanta's going quarterback, I think Milton could be fun because he definitely needs some coaching and needs some work on his accuracy for sure. Like, he did miss some layups here and there, but he's got a bazooka of a right arm. So the preseason games are going to be must-see TV with Joe Milton. But I don't think this is the target Atlanta goes after. So to wrap up this mock draft, let's run through it once more. Dallas Turner, then Michael Hall, then Kamari Lassiter. 3 straight defensive picks before they go Devontae Walker from UNC. Then Maryland's left tackle, Delmar Glaze, then Tyke Smith, then Rasheen Ali, and then Joe Milton to conclude the 8th and final pick. So how would you grade Dane Brugler's mock draft? A, B, C, D, or F? To me, I would give it a B to B minus. That 43rd overall pick, I just think has like Marlon Davidson written all over it. And I'm not super jazzed up about it. And you're already kind of reaching on Dallas Turner, which I think we all are accepting is just a result of when you've got no edge rushers, you got to take one maybe a little bit earlier than where they are projected to go per the big board rankings because of need. So I'm just not super stoked about really the Hall selection. And I know that's like really nitpicky. We're talking round 2 here, but that's why I give it a B to B minus. All right. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed our mock draft or our mock draft reaction, if you will, to the Athletics, make sure to like, subscribe, comment on the video, and I'll see you all later. Okay. Nathan says would have grabbed another edge or cornerback where they got running back. Yeah, the thing with mock drafts is when you're critical of other people's mock drafts, you have no idea who was taken and who was available. So, like, I see what you're saying, Nathan, I do, but it's like, what if the edge rushers remaining just sucked? Are we just taking one just for the sake of taking a position? Like, in day 3, it's already so hard to find, like, talent, to be honest. Guys that have an actual chance of making it in the NFL. Even if this year it doesn't feel like there's a need for running back, who knows? Tyler Algier could get injured, and then Ali balls out, and you got a new 1-2 punch, and you're so happy you made that selection around 6 instead of going like linebacker because that year you needed one. Next year you might not need one. So I think in round 3 it's not so much about prioritizing need versus players that at least have a chance of making it in this league. All right, next up on the show we have a mailbag, so get your questions in right now. #Falcons, or you can super chat. Remember, if you super chat, you skip the line. We guarantee your question gets on screen. We're still searching for our first super chatter of the day, so if you want to be one of one, feel free to support the show. I see Carson's here. Good to see you, Carson, longtime viewer. Oscar, would you move Matt back to left tackle and draft a guard? Move Matthew Bergeron. What are you going to do with Jake Matthews? We got a lot of Matthews in this team. So move Matt. For a moment, I thought you meant me. I was like, don't put me at left tackle. I was a right tackle on the freshman B team. That was the peak of my playing career. Get those #Falcons in there like Jason's doing and Isaiah. You got to have #Falcons, Aaron as well. That way the software can pull the question and put it on screen. Why don't we lead off with who had the Brandon Ayuk question?
Let me look.
It was one of the first ones we had.
Yeah, it was Diego.
Diego. Let's lead off with that question.
You want to lead off with that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't need Jax. It's the same question basically.
I got
you. Ooh, Hakeem Jameson, Malachi Corley in the 2nd. I think you could actually get Corley in the 3rd.
Yeah.
I think in the draft we tend to boost up where quarterbacks, basically players that touch the football go earlier in mock drafts than I think in reality. because they're much easier to evaluate than like defensive tackles. I mean, Jalen Hyatt won the Blitnikoff a year ago, and he went round 3. You telling me Malachi Corley is going to go before where Hyatt win? I don't think so. Maybe I got my Tennessee blinders on here, but I think Corley's actually going to be a third-round pick this year. But I don't hate the pick. I do like Malachi Corley as a player.
The Yak King.
Okay, are we ready to jump into the mailbag?
If we can get a few more questions, it just would make me feel better.
Okay. Colin's having some self-esteem issues right now, so go ahead and get some more questions in.
I just want to hear from more of you guys.
Falcons. Landon's got a question in. Austin does. I like Austin's question because he was very creative. Not a lot of people know this, but you don't have to lead the question with #Falcons or end it. You can even slip it in the middle. It's very, very smart of Austin. By the way, Randy earlier gave that mock draft an F. So at least we got our one token F for the mock draft.
Yeah. And if you want to guarantee to be on, you know what to do. Super chat. We greatly appreciate it. Helps out the show.
It sure does. Really, really does. So if you do like the free content we provide here, super chats are always greatly, greatly appreciated. Okay. Get those questions in. #Falcons. We'll get the show on the road.
Yeah, I know.
I think we'll. Yeah.
I think we'll be fine.
We'll get 1 or 2 more in. That way, Colin just kind of spazzed out. If
I do.
I'm not going to get into the weeds of the YouTube section with you guys. That's not going to make for great content. All right, here we go. Let's get into a live mailbag. Diego asking, Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins are still potentially available. What do you think we should be willing to give up for guys like that? Welcome into a mailbag, by the way, here at Falcons Today. Our live shows air every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, although this upcoming week, due to the draft, we'll be going live on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so come hang out with us. But I don't think T. Higgins is all that available. I think Cincinnati is pretty much dug in on, we're going to go all in for 2024 of the last year of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. And if that means that we don't get a great return for T. Higgins or anything for Higgins because we hold on to him for his franchise tag season, so be it. We want to try and get a ring out of 2024 Joe Burrow. So Brandon Ayuk, so I got hiccups all of a sudden. Brandon Ayuk, on the other hand, this is a much more juicy story because we're having some very petty, shots across the bow here between the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk. You can look at his stats. The former first-round pick didn't make a splash necessarily to begin his career. I remember when he started off in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. And then the last 2 years, he really turned a corner. I mean, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, averaged nearly 18 yards of reception last year for the Niners. What it would cost to get Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers are going to want a first-round pick. That much is certain. I'm not giving up the 8th overall pick for Brandon Ayuk. But what about this? What about a pick swap? Brandon Ayuk and pick 31 for pick number 8. I'm interested. I am interested. One, I think Brandon Ayuk is going to be a better football player than Dallas Turner, who is likely the selection at number 8. And you still have a first-round pick at 31. I'd be interested in this one. Not really sure how much interest Atlanta would have or the 49ers. I think San Francisco is determined to keep Ayuk. They went through this process with Deebo Samuel. They got something figured out. Ayuk's agent and the 49ers GM, they are best friends. One of them was the best man in the other one's wedding. So I'm sure that the 49ers are going to figure out a way to hold on to Ayuk. But, man, would you rather have Ayuk in the 31st overall pick or Dallas Turner? I'd go with Ayuk in the 31st overall pick. Austin, next one up on the show. If Dallas Turner is gone at 8, who would the Falcons take instead? Let's say the draft goes Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and then Tennessee goes Dallas Turner instead of Joe Alt. I'm going to say Rome Odunze. And in fact, I would actually rather have Rome Odunze than Dallas Turner because I think Rome Odunze is a better draft prospect. Now, I know wide receiver is not as big of a need for the 2024 Falcons as edge rusher is, and they're going to have a really bad pass rush if they don't address it in round 1. But If it's not Turner, Odunze is my next guy for the Falcons. And if it's not Odunze, I would go Terrion Arnold from Alabama. Jason Greenway, are you going to have a draft party? I'll be waiting. We will be live for the first round of the NFL draft here on Falcons Today. So come hang out with us. We'll be live before the NFL draft starts. I think I'm going to go live 60 minutes before round 1 kicks off. And then we'll be live through the first about 18 or so picks. And then I got to shift over to our main chat sports coverage here, our main channel, the Mothership, and help out on that front. So follow me along over there as well. But yeah, we'll be live for pick number 8. Now, before we get to the rest of the questions on today's show, make sure to check out our wonderful sponsor today, which is Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America, because it's super simple, easy withdrawals, and it's a lot of fun as well. Like, I had a friend come in town a few weekends ago. He had never heard of Prize Picks. He downloaded the app, and then we started playing along, and it just gets you locked in for some games that you may not have had a big rooting interest in before. So the thing I've been going with all offseason long is the 2024 season-long projections. I really like Kirk Cousins at 4,099.5 yards. Also like the less on Jalen Hurts' passing yards, because I just don't think Hurts is going to have the football in his hands as much with Saquon Barkley coming over. So I like Barkley more on his rushing yards as a result as well. So if you like these selections, feel free to hop along, have some fun this entire upcoming season with me, and download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS. Say it with me, CLNS, for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We got Jordan Grace. How do you feel about Deion Sanders saying he wants his son Travis Hunter in Atlanta? Deion even tried to make calls to try to get the Falcons to draft him next year. I'm not focusing on next year's draft. I can't do that to my brain. I have already spent so much time devoted to learning everyone in this year's draft. No, we can cross that bridge when we get there next year. I will add that every single year, like the first mock draft you see after the draft ends, like the day after the NFL draft, we're going to see a way too early 2025 mock draft. It's almost like it's, an unwritten rule that one of the first quarterbacks in that draft will end up sucking in college football. Like Sam Howell was supposed to be the first overall pick one year. He went round 5. Spencer Rattler was supposed to be the first overall pick one year. He didn't even enter the draft. So let's pump the brakes on next year's draft. Aaron, what's going on? See any other surprise trade partners for Falcons pick? I've heard the Rams really want to go offensive line. And they are back in the first round for the first time since Jared Goff. I don't think they would feel the need to jump all the way to 8. I mean, if you think about where the Falcons are sitting, the Bears at 9, their offensive line I don't think is going to see an addition in round 1. Maybe, but I'd be a little surprised. I think the Bears are going Rome Odunze at number 9. The Jets at 10 are not going offensive line. The Vikings at 11, I don't think they'll stay at 11, so that's kind of hard to predict. The Broncos at 12 are not going offensive line. The Raiders at 13, they could go offensive line. So if the Rams were going to jump up, I don't think it would be all the way to 8, maybe to 12 with Denver. I know that the Colts really, really want Brock Bowers, or at least that's the rumor. I should say I know as a fact. So if that's the case, do they try and jump the Jets, who could have interest in Bowers as well? Those would be 2 teams, Aaron, that I think could move up to 8. Go Dogs 23. Do you see the Falcons adding free agency players after the draft? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know off the top of my head the exact number of players on Atlanta's roster right now, but you got to think, whatever the number is, let's say it's like 75, okay, plus 8, and that gets you to 83, and then you have 7 spots left for UDFAs and other free agents. So I'm guessing we'll see a few more free agent signings after the draft, but probably not going to see any big ones. I mean, Bud Dupree was signed last year after the draft, right? Or am I making that up? I can't remember. Isaiah Jones, who is our breakout defensive player this year? That's a great question, Isaiah. Let me go with... I've got one, but I'm trying to think if I can think of a better one. DeMarco Hellams, I think he's going to have a really nice year. I remember him last preseason being like, that dude's going to start. It's just a question of when. And he ended the year as a starter over Richie Grant. And when you get to work next to Jesse Bates, you're going to learn a lot of tricks of the trade. So I like DeMarco Hellams, last year's 7th-round pick out of Alabama, as a breakout defensive candidate. I mean, great guys that can't break out because they already broke out are A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata. I think it's a little late for like Caden Ellis to break out, and he's a solid player still. So if it wasn't DeMarco Hellams, it would probably be like Clark Phillips, but I like Hellams. Ruben Diaz, how far do you think we could trade back and still get Turner? Ooh, great question, Ruben. I think you could go back to 11. Maybe the Bears take Dallas Turner at 9. Like, they need help at pass rusher really badly. The Falcons and the Bears pass rushers have been bottom of the league the last 2 or 3 years. So he may not get past Chicago at 9, to be honest. But if the Bears really want to go Roma Dunze for Caleb Williams, then I don't think he goes 10 to the Jets. They're loaded on defense. 11's the Minnesota Vikings right now, but I think they're going to trade up, and that will really change things. So I've got no idea who's actually going to be picking at 11. But Denver at 12, I think, would go Dallas Turner if he was there, because they could use some reinforcements at their pass rushing spot. Carson, next one. Do you believe in Zach Harris? Do you believe in a Zach Harrison breakout season? He had a pretty strong strong end to 2023. Like, that Jets game really jumps out to me in particular. I think Zach Harrison could have a ceiling of a 5-6 sack player. Probably going to be a little bit of a journeyman-ish, but I think it's very early on in his career, so we don't have a ton to grade him on. But I think Zach Harrison has the potential to put together a 5, maybe 5.5 sack season. And, I mean, if he's a rotational defensive lineman, I would definitely take that in a heartbeat. Adam, next one up. Thoughts on drafting a linebacker or offensive line in round 3? I don't think you got to go linebacker. You got 3 starting linebackers already for 2 jobs. Like Caden Ellis, Nate Landman, and Troy Anderson. Now, can I toss you this idea as we talk about the linebackers? We are having a hissy fit over here about the lack of pass rushers. What if you bumped Caden Ellis to outside linebacker and then started Troy Landman and Nate Anderson to get your top 3 linebackers on the field at the same time? Talk about maximizing your 11 starters. As for offensive line, unless they think that Jake Matthews is really starting to slow down, which, hey, he's been in the league for a decade plus, my guess is they're not going to go offensive line in round 3, although this is a very good offensive line draft class. So if there's a guy they think they just can't pass on, then yeah, I could see that. Plus, it's never a bad idea to have good depth at a key position like offensive line. Nathan Teal, what do you feel about wide receivers in the second round? I like some guys in round 2. I'm not really fully understanding like what you are asking, Nathan. I'm sorry, but Ladd McConkey is a name that jumps out to me for round number 2. I don't think Troy Franklin or Jalen Polk are going to be draft targets for Atlanta at pick 43. But Xavier Legette, I really do like. Phenomenal like story in terms of just his drive to continue playing football. But I think he does need a little bit more development in coaching, and I don't think Atlanta is the optimal spot for that. So Ladd McConkey would be my guy for round 2. Michael, next one up. Who would be the biggest reach at 8? Great question, Michael. I would say Laiatu Latu. And he may end up being the best of all 3, so that answer kind of, turns itself upside down. But he had really good production. He's maybe the most skilled pass rusher between Turner and Verse. But I kind of wonder, like, the analogy I gave, and this could be a bad Colin Cowherd analogy, is it's sort of like when you watch Zach Edey at Purdue. And then you know that when he gets to the NBA, the way he won in college basketball will not translate to the NBA. That's the same type of path I see Latu going down, where he got a lot of his sacks and TFLs against Coastal Carolina and Colorado last year. and he doesn't have the best physical skill set where I have concerns about that taking and translating well to the next level. So I think Latu would be the biggest reach at 8. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I really appreciate everyone who hangs out all the way to the end of our video. And if you're still watching, go on down and drop an ATL for me. Isaiah, what do we need to give up to get back? I'm sorry, Isaiah. I forgot to bring it. Well, it's okay. Isaiah, let me actually give you the full, mathematical answer now. Trade value chart. Do you want to get some shout-outs, Colin, just for a moment, please?
Sure thing. Tommy and the Buckeye, shout out to you. Michael, Nathan, Diego, Aaron, Chris, Isaiah Tyman. If you spam ATL, get a free shout-out.
Okay. We ready for my answer?
We are ready.
So Isaiah's wanting to know, hey, how can Atlanta get back into round number 1? If you go off the trade value chart, which assigns a number value to every single pick, you are going to need to give the Chiefs at 32 your second round pick, pick 43, and then according to the trade value chart, you would need to give them a third round pick around 95. Atlanta picks at 74 and 79. So technically, even 79 would be an overpay. So maybe it's 43, round 2, and round 3 for 32, and the Chiefs' 5th or 6th round pick. That's the chart answer for what it would cost. But the chart's just a rough idea. It's not an exact science. 118 people hanging out here, 78 likes. If we get a super chat, we can continue our hangout sesh here. Otherwise, I'm not joking when I say, and Colin will vouch for me, we maxed out the studios today at Chat Sports. We got the last available studio.
Literally.
And I know there are people in the bullpen who, didn't think it would have to be a major rush to get one, and now there's no more parking available.
No.
So if we don't have a super chat or two coming in, we do have to sign off. That's just kind of the unspoken rule of Chat Sports, so that other people can come in and film their content because they have channels and teams to cover as well. But if we get a super chat, we can continue hanging out with you guys, and that's what I love doing here. Time Man, how many are there? How many studios? We have lettering systems. So
I think we have 10.
10.
Because it's A, B, C, D, E, F. G is technically
G's not a filming studio.
H, I, J, K.
10?
So it's 10, yeah.
Yeah, 10 studios.
So we have 10.
10 studios for 22 NFL teams and
8 NBA teams.
8 NBA teams.
And then 3 college football teams as well.
Yeah, and college football, though. In the offseason, those are much more quieter.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Alabama, Michigan, and what?
Ohio State.
Oh, we have 2 college football teams.
All I'm saying is that there is a channel.
Yeah, technically, yes. Okay. Hey, I'm very excited for the draft next week. You should be excited as well. I'll be honest, I kind of want them to not pick Dallas Turner just because it would give us something new to talk about.
It would be...
I would kind of enjoy, being wrong.
Yeah.
Whoa, hand up, didn't see it coming, but I'm kind of excited that we got a curveball.
How about this? What if Dallas Turner's not the pick? He's on the board and Atlanta says no. Who is the most likely to go at number 8, in your opinion?
I would think that would mean they couldn't pass on Roma Dunze.
Okay.
That's how I would interpret it.
Okay.
I mean, you think about the last few Terry Fontenot drafts, he went best player available. Kyle Pitts, if you go back to 2021, you guys know if you watch the show often, I like to back up my reasoning with some level of facts and logic. And that's tough to do in sports because so much of it is opinionated driven. But we can use previous drafts as history and go off of the percentages of successful picks at this spot for this position and whatnot. And so I was looking back at previous big boards from 2021. Everyone unanimously had Trevor Lawrence 1, Kyle Pitts 2. And I think we kind of forget about that after a few years if they don't start living up to the expectations. So he went Kyle Pitts at 4, took Drake London at 8. If I remember correctly, London and Wilson were kind of even. And I think
Yeah.
I even had Garrett Wilson ahead of Drake London coming
Yeah,
out.
Wilson was, I think, like the consensus. Remember when you did that video when you were talking about how many picks Kuiper nailed, right?
Yeah.
He had like Garrett Wilson going number 8 X amount of times.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
he had London going, I think it was 10.
Yeah. He had
So it ended up being flipped.
He had them and the Jets flip-flopped.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then last year, like, everyone was super high on Bijan, but it was just like running backs just don't go early anymore because of Leonard Fournette and Saquon Barkley.
Unless you're
Oh, $2 super chat rolling in. Ed Garrett. Let's go, Ed. I'll break the ice. That's what I'm talking about, Ed. Ed is the first guy. You know who Ed is? Ed was the trailblazer at middle school dances.
Yeah.
Ed got in the middle, and he brought East Germany and West Germany together. Ed took down the Berlin Wall. That you could thank Ed for that. Ed
Shout out,
ended
Ed.
communism. That's
Shout out.
holy shit. I can't
Let's
believe
go.
Ed just did all that for us. As a society. Ed, thank you so much, dude. Beatles fan, if I am recognizing that picture correctly. Appreciate you, dude. Thank you very much once again for supporting the channel. Okay, do you want some? Do you guys want some draft takes here?
Okay.
I'm ready to fire them off.
Ooh.
Okay, here we go.
Ooh.
Ready? Chop Robinson does not go in the top 50.
Okay. That's not unreasonable, but yeah, I'll give that's bold.
Yep.
Okay.
So Chop Robinson does not go top 50. Malachi Corley is a third-round pick. You will go to Western Kentucky and you're a one-trick pony. I can buy in on that one trick, but I don't think you're going to find 60 teams that do buy in.
There's just so many other receivers
Or
that you
60
can take.
picks.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, Troy Franklin, Ricky Pearsall, not to mention all the wide receivers in the first round.
Jonathan Brooks should start looking for Dallas for houses
In
near Dallas, Frisco specifically.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a Cowboy at 50.
I agree.
I forget. I think they're 56 or something. Isaiah Jones with a $5 super chat. Let's go, Isaiah. What's your favorite mock pick so far out of all the mocks? Isaiah, are you talking specifically for Atlanta here? I mean, 95% of them have been Rome Odunze. I'm sorry, Dallas Turner. I like Rome Odunze a lot. Malik Neighbors is enticing. Like, I think Malik Neighbors may have the highest ceiling
Yeah.
between him and Odunze. But the floor is much lower than Odunze's.
Some people have Neighbors ranked ahead of MHJ,
Yeah. I know.
which is insane. But it's the potential.
Malik Neighbors ran a limited route tree at LSU. He just basically lined up in the slot and just said, hey, I'm going to run like, it's kind of hard to do with the camera, but like this.
Yeah.
See that? Yeah. And can you just like throw it over here?
Yeah.
And that was really good.
Ran a corner.
And that
yeah.
worked very well with Jaden Daniels.
Right.
When you get to the NFL, you'll go up against corners who, don't have class during the week, so they could do their research on you, and they'll take away your favorite route. So can you win elsewhere? And that remains to be seen with Malik Neighbors. But maybe he can, and like I think the tough thing that's really, I think the reason why, let me back this up. I think the reason why people miss on draft picks is because whether it's for good or bad, actually, when people miss on draft picks that were underrated and slept on and slipped through the cracks, I think it is because when you watch them at college football, college coaches have the team's best interest in mind. So if they know, and it's LSU in this example, that Jaden Daniels to Malik Neighbors on a slot fade route is going to win over and over and over again, they'll keep running the same play until someone stops them.
Yep.
And that may hinder Malik Neighbors from showing he can run other routes at the next level, but that's not Brian Kelly's job. His job is to win games, to keep his own job. Because the worst job in all of sports is college football head coach. I don't think any coach in all of pro sports works more than a college football head coach does.
24/7, 365
You're
days.
constantly coaching in the season, and then you're constantly recruiting out of the season.
Yeah.
The only good thing about being a college football head coach is getting fired so you can stop working and get the buyout.
Which is very hefty in some cases.
So it's just kind of tough
Jimbo
to
Fisher.
know, can this guy do this? I don't know.
Right.
And sometimes on defensive lines, you see this as well. Lucas Van Ness, last year from Iowa, went to the Packers at 15. The Iowa defensive line, they had senior defensive ends. They love their seniors. They had Lucas Van Ness, an underclassman, a junior, and they didn't even start him because of the seniors above him. But when they did put him on the field, they put him inside on the defensive line. And he still wreaked havoc from there, but, like, that's not where he should be playing. But Iowa did what was best for Iowa, not Lucas Van Ness. So I don't even think I'm even somewhat in the same ballpark of what Isaiah Jones is asking. And I kind of forgot how we got here. But
pretty much just
we're
going
talking
box.
about Malik Neighbors and
then,
how
exactly.
the ceiling and the floor.
Yeah.
So what's my favorite mock pick? I'm not gonna lie, the one I forgot who did it I can't remember now. Had Atlanta trading up to 5 and getting Marvin Harrison Jr. That would fuck. That would be your next Julio Jones.
Yeah, because I mean at that point,
really, like Drake London could be that guy, but I think MHJ will be that guy.
Yeah, I mean future Pro Bowler or potentially All Pro.
You got Matthew Petey fan in the chat.
Yeah, your biggest fan.
I love him. If we get some more super chats, we can continue hanging out. Everyone, a little 2-clap action for Ed Garrett and Isaiah Jones. 1, 2. Let's go, boys. Let's go. Ed and Isaiah doing the heavy lifting.
Shout out.
Like the thing you can hit. You can light them now.
Yeah.
That's
been a thing.
I feel like that's kind of YouTube rolls out these new things.
They do constantly. Shout out Brody. We are brothers.
Your cousin.
What's up, brother?
Is that your actual younger brother?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that's not actually my brother.
Before we started filming, he was like telling me about his younger brother. I was like, oh, is that him?
No.
All right. If Joe Alt is there, do we take him? You know, I am a big believer that my tombstone will say, here lies the wonderful and great Matthew Peterson. And below it will say, always go best player available and take the points in the first half. Joe Alt may be the exception because what are you going to do with Jake Matthews or Caleb McGarry? Like, I don't know how much your roster improves by adding Joe Alt. Like, let's say on a Madden scale rating, Joe Alt's a 90.
Yeah.
And Caleb McGarry's an 85.
It's not working.
You got 5 points better at tackle.
Right.
Let's say Dallas Turner's an 85.
Mm-hmm.
And Lorenzo Carter's a 70.
It's a big gap.
It's a 15-point gap.
Yeah.
15 points is a big enough margin for me to go, you have to take outside linebacker here.
I agree.
All right. Well, that will do it for us on our show today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. It's always a blast. Love what I do because of all of our viewers like you. So pat yourself on the back, by the way. A lot of the casuals are going to wake up next Monday and just start getting up to speed on the draft. Not Carson, not Isaiah, definitely not Ty Man the Buckeye, Michael, Nathan, Ed. Got some loyal viewers here. Isaiah. So pat yourself on the back for not being casuals. Diehards, baby. I love it. All right, we will sign off, and we'll see you all later.